The sky above Nareth 9 had long since stopped pretending to be a sky. Where once there had been color, blues borrowed from distant Earth, oranges caught from twin suns, now there was only smoke, soot, and the lazy descent of ash that didn't even bother to fall straight anymore. It drifted sideways as if lost, like everything else on the war-broken colony. The wind moaned softly through fractured towers, carrying the scent of burnt polymer and old ghosts. Varela crouched beneath the twisted girder of a collapsed mag rail overpass, her ears, long and soft-veined like folded leaves, tuned to every sound. She cradled her baby close to her chest, swaddled in layers of thermal silk and scavenged cloth. Oren was quiet for now, his small chest rising and falling against her. His skin shimmered faintly, a trait inherited from her people, something once considered beautiful. Now it was a beacon for death. Anything that glowed on this world was a target. "Sleep, little one," she whispered in her native tongue, which sounded like a lullaby even when she cursed. "Dream of things that aren't broken." There were no other Inari left, not that she'd seen. Maybe in the northern districts, maybe underground. But here in the shattered urban arc, she was alone. The humans had come hard, hit fast, and then just stayed. It wasn't conquest. It was something colder. Varela had lived long enough to know the difference between a war of resources and a war of fear. Oren stirred, a soft, needy sound muffled against her chest. "Don't," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "Not now." But he did. A tiny whimper grew into a full-throated wail, high-pitched and impossible to muffle. It echoed off broken concrete and into the blood-colored dusk. Varela froze. Her fingers brushed the handle of her blade, a sleek piece of curved alloy that pulsed with a faint bioluminescence. She didn't want to use it, not again. She had run out of reasons to survive, except this one. Footsteps, heavy, metal striking against stone. Her heart lodged itself somewhere around her throat. She ducked low, drew her child tighter, and eased herself back behind a crumbled section of wall. The footsteps grew closer, deliberate. Not random patrol pacing, someone following a sound. Then a voice, gruff, dry, and unmistakably human. "All right, little banshee, what are you? A cat? A ghost? Some leftover war-spawned freak with a sore throat?" She heard the safety click off a plasma rifle. Her grip on the blade tightened. She braced for the sting of it, either giving pain or receiving it. A tall figure rounded the debris, armored in the dull bronze of coalition infantry, smeared with soot and dried coolant. His helmet hung loosely from one hand, revealing a shock of black hair and the sort of face that looked like it had taken too many fists and not enough sleep. He squinted into the dimness, and then he saw her. Everything froze. She didn't move. Neither did he. Her eyes locked with his, golden and unblinking. His were green, sharp, twitching with instinct. The baby let out another soft wail. The soldier blinked, and instead of shouting or aiming or calling for backup, he reached into his belt pouch. "Well," he muttered, pulling out a silver-wrapped ration bar. "Guess we all scream when we're hungry." He tossed it toward her feet. It landed with a plasticky thunk. Varela stared at him. This had to be a trap. There were rules. Kill the enemy on sight, especially if they weren't human, especially if they had long ears and shimmering skin. But his rifle stayed down. He didn't move forward. "Go on," he said, voice softer now. "It's mostly edible. Might turn your insides into gelatin, but hey, you'll die fed." Her fingers unwrapped the bar with cautious precision. She sniffed it, compressed nutrients and synthetic almond, and touched it to Oren's lips. The baby suckled weakly. The soldier watched, then crouched a little. Not close, not aggressive, just tired. "I'm Corporal Dax Morrow," he said. "Don't worry, I don't expect a name in return. Just figured I'd rather talk to a long-eared lady than shoot her." Varela raised an eyebrow. Slowly, warily, she replied in thickly accented standard. "You are strange, Dax Morrow." He grinned. "Lady, if you knew how many times I've heard that." A silence followed, tense, but not hostile. Behind Dax, the city moaned again, another tower collapsing somewhere in the distance. Lights flickered on the horizon where drones still patrolled, oblivious to moments like this. She should run. She knew it. but her legs wouldn't move. Not because of fear, because she didn't want to. "You are not following orders," she said quietly. "Story of my life," he replied. "You know, I once got reassigned for using a medical drone to microwave a burrito." Her ears twitched. A tiny involuntary laugh escaped her. It startled them both. Dax grinned wider. "Told you, I'm full of bad decisions." They stayed there a while, not speaking, just listening, to the baby breathing, to the city groaning, to the war that still raged somewhere too close and too far. Eventually, he gestured toward a nearby wrecked transport shuttle with a partially intact interior. "I know a place," he said. "Doctor, warmish. Smells like burnt coolant and maybe a little regret." Varela hesitated. He shrugged. "Suit yourself. Just thought it'd be better than hanging out where you scream for everyone and their deathbot to hear." She followed him. Inside the transport shell, lights flickered weakly from emergency reserves. The floor tilted slightly, but it was quiet. The walls hummed with residual heat. She found a corner and settled there. Dax took the other. "So," he said, leaning back, "you always carry babies into battle zones, or is this a one-time deal?" Varela exhaled slowly. "He was born during the siege." "Yikes. That's a rough first birthday party." Another silence, this one less tense. The child stirred, then slept. Dax's voice softened. "I didn't think... I mean, we're told your people don't keep their young close. That you, I don't know, grow them in tubes or something." Varela rolled her eyes. "You believe everything your propaganda cube tells you?" "I believe spaghetti grew on trees until I was 11. Not the most critical thinker, me." Another sound, not laughter exactly, but the shadow of it. Varela let herself lean back against the wall, still wary, but just a fraction less alone. And outside, the ash continued to fall. By morning, if you could call the dim, amber glow bleeding through the fractured hull. Morning, the baby was still asleep, and Dax was balancing a cracked, portable heater on 2 stacked rations like a makeshift shrine to poor engineering. "If this explodes," he said without turning around, "I want it on record that it was for science, and also because I'm really sick of cold food." Varela watched him, one brow arched. Her long ears twitched in disbelief. "You are heating protein cubes with an ammunition battery." "Correction," he said, grinning as sparks leapt from the base. "I'm gourmet heating them. Big difference." The battery sputtered, and with a final pop, a faint warmth pulsed into the air. Dax leaned back proudly. "Voila! 1-star dining experience. Michelin? Never heard of her." She allowed a small, slow shake of her head. "You humans and your stubborn desire to die creatively. We prefer the term improvisational survivalists. Very edgy, very tragic." The faint moment of peace stretched as they sat in the hollowed-out cabin of the derelict transport. Panels blinked dimly around them, flickering with ghosts of circuitry that hadn't realized the war was over, at least in this part of the city. The outside world felt like a distant snarl. Inside, surrounded by scorched walls and hushed machinery, they had carved out a pocket of stillness. Oren stirred and gave a soft coo, barely a sound, but it still brought Varela to full alertness. Her instincts hadn't dulled, only shifted. She touched his cheek gently, her hand trembling with exhaustion more than fear. When she looked up, Dax was already watching, curiosity and something else flickering in his eyes. "So," he said carefully, "you said he was born during the siege. How'd you survive it?" She hesitated. "The tunnels. Inari dwellings run deep. We built them that way after your kind first came." He winced a little at the phrasing but didn't argue. "My unit cleared those tunnels," he muttered. "At least, we thought we did. You didn't look hard enough." There was no venom in her voice, just a quiet truth. She wasn't interested in blame, at least not at the moment. There were too many ghosts already dancing around them. Still, Dax looked away for a second, rubbing at his jaw as if scrubbing the guilt out. "You know," he said after a beat, "there was a rumor going around camp, said the Inari had a secret underground archive, genetic memory vault or something. Like, you guys saved your history in blood." "It's not rumor," Varela replied, settling the child against her. "It's heritage. My people record life through inherited memory. Each child receives the echo of generations. We do not write books. We become them. Dax blinked. So, your kid's basically a walking library? She nodded. He carries the voices of hundreds. Every word my grandmother knew. Her mother before her. Back to the first colonists from the home nebula. Damn, Dax said, leaning forward. And here I am proud because I remembered my sister's birthday 2 years in a row. Varela smirked. It was a rare expression. Not quite a smile, but lighter than her usual guardedness. Your people forget because you rely on machines. We remember because forgetting costs us lives. Philosophical, he said, then frowned. Also a little ominous. Are all Inari this intense, or are you just the special edition? I am standard model, she replied flatly, and that time he did laugh. The warmth inside the cabin held a little longer as they shared more of themselves in fragments. Dax told her about his first deployment, accidentally detonating a support mech's fire suppression system during training, which turned the entire barracks into a slip and slide of foam and humiliation. Varela, after much prodding, described her first memory, a shared vision of the oceans of Eneral 5, from a great-grandmother who had never touched land in her lifetime. They were stories from different planets, different species, different centuries, and yet somehow they fit. But the calm didn't last. The warning came as a low-pitched tremor. Varela's ears stiffened instantly. Dax tilted his head. The heater's flickering light trembled. Something's moving, she whispered. Yeah, he said, reaching slowly for his rifle. And it ain't Santa Claus. They were outside in seconds, ducking low through the wreckage. The sound grew louder, a whirring, thrumming rhythm that rose like an angry hornet's nest, a coalition drone swarm. Recon pattern Delta, Dax muttered. Those things scan thermal signatures through 3 meters of durasteel. And they are armed. Lightly, he replied. Just enough to erase your sense of self-worth. He handed her a compact device from his belt. Cloak mesh. Won't hide us long, but if we time the pulse. She activated it just as the first drone crested over the edge of a collapsed skyscraper. It was sleek, black, and insectile, its lenses swiveling like the eyes of a predator too bored to be surprised. They crouched behind a fallen support beam. Oren began to fuss. No, 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 Dax whispered urgently, rocking in place like a soldier trying to soothe a grenade. You're a very quiet baby, remember? Whisper your ancestral knowledge. Don't yell it. Varela's hand tightened over the blanket. The cloak mesh fizzled. On my count, Dax whispered. We run to that underpass. You trust me? No, she replied, but I'm out of options. They ran. The drone locked on a second too late. Energy rounds snapped into the stone beside them, kicking up clouds of debris. Dax fired over his shoulder, hitting nothing but air and regret. Remind me to teach you how to use cover, Varela shouted. I was homeschooled. They dove under the overpass just as the drone clipped the edge of the concrete. Sparks and metal shards rained down. The swarm veered overhead, recalibrating, but already fading into the city beyond. Dax groaned, rolling onto his back. Whew, that was invigorating. Varela didn't respond immediately. She cradled Oren, checking him carefully. He stared up at her, eyes bright, utterly unfazed by the chaos. Then slowly, she turned to Dax. You saved us. Please let the official record show I am very brave and moderately foolish. You did not have to help. Dax gave her a lopsided grin. Yeah, but the alternative was letting a baby library get turned into space dust. Seemed rude. She looked at him for a long time, as if trying to read something deeper. And then, softly, she said, You are not what I expected from a human soldier. Lady, he said, propping himself up, I'm not what I expected from a human soldier. And for a while, laughter was louder than the war. The days bled into each other like watercolors in rain, soft at the edges, messy in the middle, and strange in hue. Narith 9 remained a wasteland, a twisted sprawl of broken tech and scorched stone, but something inside it was shifting. Not in the landscape, no, that stayed as grumpy and inhospitable as ever, but in the people who still breathe within it. Or rather, the person. Dax Morrow was discovering he wasn't exactly the same man who'd wandered into a crumbling alley because a mysterious cry had ruined his breakfast plans. He knew it the day Varaya shot him. To be fair, it was more of a warning shot. A harmless stun round aimed precisely at the drone crawling behind him, its tiny scanning arm twitching like a paranoid chihuahua. But still, technically a bullet had left a weapon with his general direction involved. "You could have warned me first," he said, blinking through the stun's residual static. "And miss the expression you made?" Varaya said, deadpan. "Impossible." Dax rolled over and groaned. "I'm developing trust issues." "Good. It'll keep you alive." That was the way it went now. Half banter, half survival, all wrapped in a weird, delicate truce that had become something more substantial than either of them had intended. The makeshift shelter under the old solar array had become home, in the loosest possible sense of the word. They had reinforced it with scavenged metal plating and powered up a half-functioning field generator Dax had found in a pile of what he insisted was military-grade refuse. "It's fine," he said, dragging wires and muttering to himself. "Everything's fine if you believe in it hard enough, just like my childhood therapist told me." "I feel unsafe," Varaya muttered, watching him arc sparks across his own boots. "Good. That means it's working." Oren, for his part, was growing fast, alarmingly fast. His hair had begun to shift through shades of starlight silver, and when he giggled, lights pulsed in the air like tiny fireflies. Dax had spent an entire afternoon trying to trap one in an empty ration container, declaring himself a Firefly Wrangler, licensed and unregulated. Varaya, arms crossed, had watched him chase invisible glimmers with the amused detachment of someone who wasn't sure if she was sheltering with a soldier or a spacefaring sitcom character. But not everything was jokes and jury-rigged miracles. The world outside their sanctuary kept moving. The war, according to intercepted broadcasts and scrambled coalition comms, was shifting direction. Human troops were pulling back from Narith 9, consolidating their forces. Rumors whispered of an armistice, a treaty drawn not from peace, but from exhaustion. No one was winning anymore, just bleeding slower, and that changed things. "Extraction teams will be here in 5 days, Dax said one evening, his voice quieter than usual as they sat near the heater, Oren asleep between them. "They'll sweep the city for friendlies, and they'll scan for hostiles." Varaya didn't answer. She simply stared into the soft blue glow of the heater's core. "They'll find you," he continued. "Find him, and I won't be able to stop it." Now she looked at him, not with anger, not even with fear, just tired knowing. "You could lie," she said. Dax let out a hollow chuckle. "I could barely lie about missing curfew back in school. Sorry, Mom. I was abducted by asteroid pirates. Only works once, turns out." "So that's a no. That's a not yet." He stood, paced a little, ran a hand through hair that hadn't seen soap in too many days. "But I've been thinking. You said Inari passed down memory, that Oren carries the history of your people." "Yes. What if—" He hesitated. "What if we made sure someone else heard that memory? Someone human?" She frowned. "It's not a story you tell. It's something you become." "Right. So let's become it." They started building something the next day. A neural bridge, a hybrid device built from both Inari memory relays and human interface tech. It was sketchy. It was illegal. It was, Dax insisted, possibly the greatest unauthorized science experiment since Steve the engineer tried to weaponize cafeteria pudding. "But did that work?" Varaya asked, skeptical. "Oh, totally," Dax grinned. "They're still patching holes in the mess hall." The device took shape. Wires like veins. A cradle for the child. A receiver for the host. Varaya calibrated it using techniques older than the colony itself. Dax soldered with reckless confidence. And then came the moment. "You sure about this?" he asked, eyeing the sleek silver interface that now hummed between them. "You will not be the same," he smirked. "Honestly, that's the goal." She placed Oren gently into the relay cradle. He blinked up, eyes glowing softly. The hum deepened. Lights danced around them. Then Varaya placed her hand on Dax's chest. Not a gesture of romance, a gesture of grounding. "Breathe," she said. He did. The bridge activated. Dax jolted. And in the span of a heartbeat, he saw it all. Oceans that stretched into starlight. Skies of molten glass. Songs sung not with words but color. He felt the hands of ancestors brush against his thoughts. Fear, joy, love, rage, all of it. Generations. Thousands of lives. Not his. But now, part of him. The device deactivated. He staggered. Okay, he gasped, clutching his head. That was like binge-watching every season of existence with the emotional dial stuck on maximum. You survived, Varela said. He looked at her. Eyes different now. Wiser. Fuller. You were right, he murmured. Forgetfulness does cost lives. When the extraction team arrived, Dax met them alone. Told them he'd found nothing. No survivors. Just wreckage and static. The scanner showed only one life form on record, Dax himself. Faulty bioscanner, he said with a shrug. Inari Tech must have fried it. Too bad. I guess I'm all that's left. They believed him. Mostly because no one expected a half-grinning corporal with a ration bar addiction to hide one of the last Inari and her miracle child. Varela and Oren left Narith 9 in an old Inari scout vessel the day after. Dax watched the skies until the stars swallowed them. Months later, a report surfaced in the Coalition archives. Unofficial. No author listed. A detailed, hauntingly poetic account of Inari history, complete with cultural philosophies, migration paths, genetic lineages. A document too precise to be human-made, too emotional to be artificial. It circulated through the ranks, scientists and scholars arguing over its authenticity. They called it the Memory Testament, but Dax never claimed it. He just smiled whenever he heard someone mention it, usually over lunch, usually while chewing on something tasteless. Sounds like good reading, he'd say. I should borrow a copy. And in quiet moments, he could still feel it. That weight of memory, the pulse of a world not his. A legacy carried not in blood, but in choice. Because everything had changed when a baby cried. And Dax Morrow had listened.